to have with us leaders from the Pomona Valley chapter of the NAACP. We have the president, Jeanette, who has relaunched this chapter 8 years ago, and they are doing such incredible work. We have Ted, who is the historian of the chapter and is doing work on the Poor People's Campaign. I know a lot of people in our congregation have been involved with the Poor People's Campaign. Unfortunately, it was digital this year. I know we were ready to send a delegation to DC. Yolanda, who's the education chair, and Natalie, who's the religious affairs chair. So they're going to share a little bit about the work that they're doing, the ways in which the community can be involved, just so we learn a little bit more about locally what's happening with our local organizations. So if we could just please give a digital welcome to everyone, applaud or put a reaction on your Zoom meeting, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jeanette. Will you be starting us off?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I'll just go ahead. I appreciate it. First of all, I want to say thank you to Jacob for the opportunity, and to Reverend Strickland. I sure do appreciate this opportunity. You did mention that 8 years ago that the branch was reactivated, and because it was inactive for 22 years. And yes, many of those members were not even aware that the branch was no longer here or not in existence. So sure enough, we have reactivated. We have approximately 158 members strong, totally locally. And nationally, we have 189 members on the national Pomona Valley branch roster. So with that said, many of us do not hear the term or the accolation of NAACP. So I like to share that. It is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And the organization itself is 111 years old. It was established in 1909 by W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida Mae B. Wells, and several white socialists in Springfield, Illinois. So I like to share that because I'm talking about how African American and white came together to create something that still exists today. Mary Overton was also one of the white socialists, and her and W.E.B. Du Bois actually ended up working together for several years. So I'd like to make sure that we are aware of that. It's in the history. If anyone actually researched the history, you will actually find that, but not often everyone searched the history. But to take it on that the local branch itself is one of 52 branches in the state of California, and one of 2,500 in the nation. The Pomona Valley branch actually serves 10 cities. The 10 cities that the NAACP Pomona Valley branch serves, 5 cities in San Bernardino County and 5 cities in LA County. San Bernardino County, we serve Upland, Montclair, Ontario, Chino, and Chino Hills. In LA County, we serve Claremont, Pomona, San Dimas, Laverne, and Diamond Bar. With that representation, the Pomona Valley branch tries really hard to participate in all 10 of those cities, mainly because we have members who actually are residents or they work in those one of those 10 cities. So we are definitely aware of what's going on in those 10 cities. And Claremont is one of our closest. We have several members of the NAACP that reside in the city of Claremont, which I am very, very proud of. Also, to get into the point as what some of what we have done in the city of Pomona and the neighboring cities. Before I go there, I would like to share with you where I get my energy from to actually maintain or to create such a social justice movement. I'm going to take and share a little bit about my personal life. I was actually born in Charleston, South Carolina, and my parents have 9 children. So I'm one of 9 children. My parents migrated or relocated from Charleston to New York. So I'm a product of New York City school system. I graduated from high school in 1965. I'm also a graduate of Long Island University with a BA degree in education. But where I get my energy from is that as I was growing up in high school and in junior high and college, I'm hearing community leaders being assassinated. I could not understand why or how that was happening. Now, there are 5 community leaders, politicians, that I actually followed in my lifetime, and I was very excited about the work that they were doing, pretty much what we're doing today. Those 5 politicians, community leaders, I'm going to share it with you because this is where I get my energy from today. Bobby Kennedy, he was actually promoting civil rights. He was right here in California at the Ambassador Hotel, gave a fantastic presentation, and was assassinated right after. Bobby Kennedy left a wife and children. Then you have Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers was promoting fair housing for low income. He was assassinated in his driveway. How does these things happen? Then you have J.F. Kennedy riding in a motorcade, sitting beside his wife. He was assassinated. Then you have, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. After he gave his famous speech, he was assassinated. Then, of course, you have Malcolm X. That happened April 1965. I graduated from high school in June of 1965. These images, these assassinations are with me today, and it gives me energy to keep going, to keep moving for social justice. I just want to share that with you because today, and what happened with George Floyd and with Breonna Taylor and with all of the other, you can name them. Those young people in the street, they are never going to forget these images. And their energy, we must never ever discount their energy for violence. No, it isn't violence. They are actually trying to find a way to stop the violence. So I share that with you because I really would love the support of what's happening today. And I'm going to actually close with one of my concern here. With the police violence and what's going on right now, one of the legislation or policies that's on the books, we know is structural systemic racism. Qualified immunity, and I'm throwing this out because I'd like for those of you who are listening to somehow research qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is giving or is a shield for police officers not to be convicted for wrongdoing. That was instituted in 1983. Please research it. If it's anything that you walk away with from today's presentation, we would need support in how to dismantle qualified immunity. Congresswoman Norma Torres have a piece of legislation on the books now. Please research it. Judy Chu is your congressperson. Research qualified immunity. We need support in that piece of legislation. It needs to be dismantled. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to introduce Yolanda Brown, who is the education chair. There'll be questions at the end. Yolanda Brown.
Good morning, Pastor Jacobs and the Claremont United Church in Christ. Good morning, all. Good morning, all that is on the line this morning. I will be sharing some updates on the service that I presently relate to. I am the educational chair for the NAACP Pomona Valley branch. And as Madam President shared, we service 10 cities, and those particular 10 cities all have school districts. And some of them are combined and some of them are single. But I will start out with Claremont School District. So I will share with you, all of the services are being handled right now through the virtual Zoom. They're having their school board meetings virtually, and the schools should start back school in September the 3rd for Claremont. They have been very thoughtful about social and emotional learning and resources for their students, which I thought was very of importance because many students are challenged with the disconnecting and not being socially engaging going to school regularly. And as far as they're going to continue virtually learning, they are all doing distant learning at home, computers, all the students getting Chromebooks, and it appears that they have a large selection of services for their students via their conversations at the school board meeting. Now I will share about the Chino Valley Unified School District, which is the Chino and the Chino Valley schools that we are providing service. They notice that they're not having enough devices, Chromebooks. So that is one of their primary glitches, and the communication relations to the students and the parents of how to utilize the Chromebooks has been very challenging. I spoke to a parent that is a resident of the Chino Valley, and she was sharing that there is a lot of glitches that are happening in the Chino School District. Now I will share about Ontario and Montclair. However, in their school district, they have well enough universal devices, and they have a lot of Chromebooks. So they are on top of their game. Kudos to them. Their highlights that I think that they were very expressive and very compassionate about is the transparency that they have in their schools. They also are very concerned about those parents and students that are falling into the gap of not being successful in this virtual learning. So they are doing a number of services to meet the gaps for those students. Now I will share some information. Bonita Unified School District will be San Dimas and Laverne and parts of Glendora. The school district this particular school district has gone back as of August the 26th. They are all in virtual learning. They're doing a vigorous learning program, and they have a number of information on their computer, on the computer Google systems, and their Chromebooks are actually being utilized very well. Their highlights that I thought about this particular school district is that they were very mindful about making sure that the students were having enough time to socially connect by having recess periods and opportunity to engage in other ways other than the academic learning skills. Now I will move on to Pomona School District. When I watched the school board meeting, which was on the 18th of this month, they had a number of concerns. There was some concerns about the MOU, about the learning and the hybrid model. They signed off on it on the 28th, and there was some glitches about how it was signed, and they had to go over that. However, I want to share with you, it was all signed, and now they are definitely have their plan in place. Teachers are very aware. Teachers are very engaging, from what I understand in the conversation. However, some highlights for them, they have now this year, they have adopted the positive behavior intervention support. It's an evidence-based practice program that they'll be using. Teachers will be trained and staff will be trained how to support children in behavior issues. That's when they go back to regular site. They also have adopted what you call the sky breathing support for social and emotional. They will be doing some trainings. They have trained some of their community people to do training online for parents, and sky breathing is a technique that you use to de-escalate when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and for other reasons, and also for behavior issues. They also have the Pomona Library has partnered, of course, and they are going to be continuing their homework club via virtual, and they're also going to have some opportunities for checking out their library books. However, there was a great community concern at the Pomona School District, and the concern is that, as we all know, that on August the 17th, Gavin Newsom has signed the bill off for ethnic studies to take place in the universities and the UC colleges. However, the Pomona residents have been asking and requesting that ethnic studies be a part of the curriculum for the high school students. And there was a total of 15 public announcements from parents and community and stakeholders that are urging the school board and the school district to take a look at that to help with the disproportionate of services, disproportionate of relationships and academic, and also just for socialness, because ethnic studies is going to cover that people of color. And people of color mean Asian, that means Latinos, that means African Americans, that means the Chinese. All of those people of color would like to see themselves in the language, in textbooks, and in study of understanding, and not just wait until we get to college and then learn all of this information. We need to learn it ahead. So Pomona's community and stakeholders are urging the district to move forward with that. And I just urge that all districts would push forward with that too. It would definitely, it could even de-escalate some of the racial and disparity that's happening in the school districts. So I my hat goes off to the Pomona people and them that are trying to push that forward. Okay, so let me move on. We have the Upland School District, in Upland School District, they had their last school board meeting was on the 26th, on the 25th, and they all went back to school on the 26th. I would like to share that they had a town hall meeting, and on their website, they had a fine document for parents to view how to connect and how to use the Chromebooks and how to stay connected and helping your students gain knowledge and understanding of this virtual learning. So my hat goes off to them, and they are definitely providing Chromebooks for all of their students, and they also have hotspots availability for them. The highlight that I think that Upland would have is that they have an MOU with the Biola University for interns and the teacher support systems, which they're going to help with their speech, language, early childhood, and some of those students with disabilities. So I thought that was great that they were having that discussion. I'm going to move on. That was the highlight. Walnut Valley Unified, which is the Diamond Bar school that we service, Diamond Bar area. School started on August the 10th, and the school board meeting was August the 5th. They are doing virtual learning, and the problem is that I didn't get much information from them is because their computer has a glitch and their long distance learning site is down at this time. So I'm unable to give you any information. So that's my report in relationships to the 10 cities that we serve and the 10 school districts that we are working with. And I think they're all doing a great job. And thank you for listening. My name is Yolanda Brown. I'm going to leave my email in the chat for those that would like to ask me any questions or would like to send me anything that have any questions related to it. Thank you.
You're muted at the moment, Jeanette.
Yolanda, you have to introduce Natalie.
Aunt. And now we will hear from Natalie Shivers, the Religious Affairs.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, and that was an uplifting report. This branch does a lot of activities and a lot of action around education, around bills relating to police violence, around voter and voter registration. So I am, as chair of the Religious Affairs Committee, along with Bobby Nix and Dorothy Shepard, NAACP members, working on interracial dialogues on race. And 4 years ago, I had just moved from Western Massachusetts, where I was active with that NAACP branch in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And I met Jeanette and the rest of the NAACP executive board, and we came up with this idea of a circle of chairs, racial diversity dialogue, back in January of 2017. And this is our third year now. We realized that there's an old saying that a story is the shortest distance between people. So the dialogues are meant to hear one another's stories and build communication and cooperation and action among white participants in these dialogues, as well as participants of color. We also partner with the National Council of Negro Women on these dialogues. So it's Pilgrim Place, where I live, and the NAACP Pomona Valley chapter and National Council of Negro Women. We began 3 years ago simply sharing our upbringing, our backgrounds, our heritage, our family, who encouraged us and helped us along, and how living as a white person or a person of color had shaped us. And we built deeper relationships amongst each other by understanding our faith, by understanding our strengths, our history, our particular stories. And these were some of I want to give you some examples of some of the questions that we had in these small group discussions. The vehicle for these were small group discussions of maybe 6 or 8 people. So for example, tell me a belief about race or racism that you have learned from your family and culture. And then how was that for you growing up, and how has that changed today? That would be an example of some of those early conversations. Another might be pertaining to race and racism. What are some stereotypes and jokes that you grew up hearing or sharing? How did it feel then, and how does it feel now? So we were growing together that first year to develop trust, to develop understanding of one another and one another's particular stories, based on whether we grew up as a white person or we grew up as an African American or a Latinx person. Another question coming into that in that first year is, how do you feel most comfortable about your race? And then when do you feel uncomfortable about your race? And what is that racial tension like for you? What insights have you experienced? And then we share through a discussion of how we have experienced growing up with different attitudes towards race in our society. In the second year, we worked with, it became intergenerational. We worked with Claremont College students. And that was really insightful because most of us were in our 60s and 70s. And so we needed that kind of new understanding and levity. And the question, an example of a question there that we had with 15 or 20 undergraduates from the Claremont colleges. When we discuss race and culture, we are bringing more than just ourselves to the conversation. We are bringing our ancestry and our understanding of ethnicity. What does it mean to be an American living in the United States and from a specific heritage? And how did your ancestry contribute to culture, and how has that influenced US culture? And so that really grew our understanding and the depth of what inspirations and what is the value added. Coming into the third year, this was the triple pandemic of COVID-19, of police violence, and of racism. And so the focus has been on sharing, using videos and poetry that some of our members, Ann Houston Sego is one of our NAACP members, and she is a poet and an author. So she would share her poems on the color of our skin and growing up Black, and then we'd show videos. So what has touched your life during this time of the pandemic, this triple pandemic of police violence and COVID-19 and racism? And what is the perception for you and for others? And how are we in this together? How is what we're doing contributing to how we go forward? Now, one of the things that we've been using to help us deal with the trauma of this triple pandemic is a book by Resmaa Menakem, a therapist and trauma specialist out of Minneapolis, who wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hands, Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies. I'll put that in the chat along with my email. And how we carry racialized stress and trauma in our bodies. And we've used this book as a template for this particular period of time of looking at this triple pandemic. Because we realize that we store stress in our bodies, and Yolanda referred to that, the importance of doing exercise to help students to de-stress. So when our bodies don't feel safe, our bodies brace. Am I in danger or am I safe? And we found that both white people as well as people of color have this stress in our bodies. So we do exercises actually in the circle of chairs, dialogue on race, to become more open-hearted and open-minded, because when our bodies are stressed, then we can't think clearly and our hearts can't open. So we do exercises with breathing, with opening our hearts, stretching the vagal nerve and the psoas muscle, which are the cranial nerves that run from the brain through the face and neck. And when when you feel those butterflies in your gut, that's that parasympathetic fibers that make you feel stressed. So we work on that to de-stress that in our Circle of Chairs dialogues on race. And that helps us then be able to open our hearts and minds to really hear one another. So we will be continuing to do these dialogues as a entrance in to action, creative action that we've all been involved with, such as our working together on Black Lives Matter with NAACP, Pilgrim Place, and voting rights and other actions. So I want to thank you again, Pastor Jacob and Claremont United Church of Christ and NAACP Pomona Valley Branch for this opportunity to share about this. If you are interested in knowing more about the Circle of Chairs Dialogue on Race or participating, I will put my email up on the chat board, and our next Circle of Chairs Dialogue on Race is coming up on September 12th. Thank you very much. I want to introduce now Ted Burnett. He's the SEIU 1000 Service Employees International Union Deputy Director and also Poor People's Campaign Historian for our local branch. Ted?
Thank you for having me. So the Poor People's Campaign is the foundation is from a moral compass viewpoint and a lens, and it deals a lot with fusion politics. And we know that fusion politics is nothing new. People have always come together in the cause of intersectionality of their shared interests and about doing the right thing. And we can look through history about when people came together in a common goal of bringing the right thing and doing the right thing in order to have a moral compass. We can go back to the first Reconstruction in 1865 when freed slaves, abolitionists, and white religious leaders helped end slavery. It also happened in the First Nation indigenous Americans who allowed escaped slaves to live on the reservation to protect them against the Fugitive Slave Act, which led to the Third Seminole War. Fusion politics is not new only to the United States. In Mexico, fusion politics allowed the second president of Mexico, Vicente Guerrero, who was Black and Mexican, to harbor American slaves and indigenous people escaping from the United States government. And that kind of fusion politics helped Guerrero abolish slavery in Mexico in 1842. Fusion politics also had Blacks and poor whites to come to the aid of Chinese Americans between 1900 and 1904, when structural systemic racism blamed the outbreak of the bubonic plague on Asian Americans in San Francisco. Sounds familiar? And so if you understand the history of the Poor People's Campaign, it started out when Martin Luther King and a lot of groups from the Southern Christian Leadership Council wanted to bring about the plight of the poor and unemployment and homelessness to Washington, D.C. And they had planned that march, but on the way to the march, Martin Luther King stopped off in Tennessee to deal with the strike from the garbage workers, because a couple of garbage workers was in the, Black men was in the back of the compartment, sheltered themselves from the rain, and the garbage truck malfunctioned and crushed them to death. That's why Martin Luther King came there, and he was assassinated there. So they continued, Ralph Abernathy and the Southern Christian Leadership Council and their group continued to have the march, even though Dr. King was assassinated. So from May 12th to June 24th, they came into Washington, D.C. from all over the nation for 6 weeks to camp out. The post office gave them their own zip code, which was called Resurrection City 20013. And so everybody came together in fusion politics, because this was not just a Black problem, it was an American problem. And at that time, the Poor People's Campaign presented to President Johnson a $30 billion poverty package. And like Jeanette said, Senator Robert Kennedy supported this march so that people can also understand what they needed to do to help out. And so it was one of the great marches, but after the march, the Poor People's Campaign dissipated. And so 4 years ago, Reverend Barber and Pastor Liz came together and revitalized the Poor People's Campaign. And we started off in 2018 with 40 days of action that was started on Mother's Day and went all across the nation. And we also went to Sacramento and protested, and a lot of us got arrested and everything else. And we pushed that forward. And then in June 2019, we convened over 100 community leaders in Washington again to talk about the plight of the poor and the fact that 3 richest Americans hold more wealth than 50% of the bottom of the US citizens: Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Jeff Bezos. And so we have to understand that those things are not right when people are starving, people need the safety net and everything else. So on our March on Washington that we just had, June 2020, we unleashed a program called our Jubilee Program. And the Jubilee Program is nothing new to people who read the Bible. It was the same Jubilee Program that was in the Old Testament, that in Leviticus, that talked about the 7th cycle of Shemitah. And it talked about land ownership, management of the land, and that after 50 years, people will have a redistribution of wealth. Hebrew slaves and prisoners would be freed, debts would be forgiven, and the mercies of God would manifest. And that deals with not only the person, but land, property, and property rights. And so we came out with our Jubilee Program on our moral justice policy platform. And that includes the Poor People's Moral Justice Jubilee Policy is organized in 5 sections. 1, establish justice and end systematic racism, the right to democracy and equal protection under the law. 2, promote the general welfare, the right to welfare, and adequate standing of living. 3, ensure domestic tranquility and the right to work with dignity. 4, secure the blessings of liberty, the right to health and a healthy environment. 5, provide the common defense and reprioritizing our resources, because it's grounded in the pillars of everybody in, nobody out. Everybody is deserving of our nation's abundance. And when you lift from the bottom, everybody rises instead of the trickle down effect that we know that doesn't work. We need to prioritize the leadership of the poor, the low income, and the most impacted. Those who are on the front line of these crises must also be in the lead of identifying their solutions. Debts cannot be paid, must be relieved. We demand freedom from the servicing of the debts we cannot pay. And 5, we need a moral revolution of the values to repair the breach of our land. And this platform is actually abides by our deepest moral and constitutional commitments to justice. Where harm has been done, it must be acknowledged and undone. So as we look at those things and continue to fight on those things, we understand that 57 years ago and the anniversary on the March on Washington, Dr. King talked about these principles in his speech. And it was moving to me to know about that march, because the one that caught my eye that in learning history is the fact that Mahalia Jackson, who was the queen of gospel back then, she sung great at the program. And as Martin started his speech, which was pre-written, the I Had a Dream part wasn't written in his speech originally. But Mahalia Jackson told Martin during his speech, "Hey, Martin, tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." And so that's when he improvised and said, "I had a dream." That gives me chills to understand that fast forward today, 57 years later, we have a moral obligation to stand up for the poor, love our neighbors as we love ourselves. If you do it unto the least of me, you also do it unto me. And I want to end with a saying that I always say: we may have come to America on different ships, but now we're all in the same boat. God bless you.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Ted. I want to say thank you to Ted, Natalie, and Yolanda. They actually complement each other. And Pastor Jacob, when you asked for a presentation, I wanted to make sure that we actually spoke to the issues that concerns all of us, an inclusive issue. And I'm hoping that what you heard today from Yolanda and from Natalie and from Ted, it actually speaks to the congregation heart to believe that we actually have a moral obligation to each other. We have a spiritual obligation to each other. I want to say this also, knowing that Claremont United Church has a history with Pilgrim Place. I read in the history, I did a little research, and I found that to be true. I want to say Natalie is doing a fantastic job over at Pilgrim Place. And I thank Natalie for her vision, to the point where I really appreciate the fact that she's coming from a religious perspective. And the fact that we are this morning at church, at Claremont United Church, it is a religious platform. And I'm hoping that that was well received, because we do have a moral responsibility, as Ted say. Now, I do know that in my bio to you, I gave you a list of different movement that we are involved in. I don't really want to go through it because you really want time for question and answer, but I'm going to leave it there. But I do want to say this, Pastor Jacob, I hope we did well, because I remember when you did your installation for the NAACP Pomona Valley branch in 2019, you actually left us speechless, because many of us, you just hit our point, because Poor People's Campaign and community involvement was actually your presentation. So I hope we did justice for your legacy. Then you came to us in 2019. And I'm going to end there. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, you are amazing. And you all have already had multiple sermons for the day. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And I just want to highlight for everyone listening, we're going to open it up. We have a few moments for questions. If you saw in the chat, just some action items. Jeanette talked about the bill for qualified immunity. I put in the chat another bill that requires a duty to intervene as she said, I hope you all research this and write your local representatives to encourage them to pass this legislation in California. Claremont has recently opened up applications for a committee they're forming on diversity and inclusion. They want to get a committee together to talk about what it looks like to have racial justice within the school system. Hopefully we can push other local school districts to do the same. Yolanda talked a little bit about what's happening in Pomona with a request for ethnic studies. And thank you, Natalie, for this great highlighting of what it looks like when we can have open conversations with each other about race and have honest conversations. I hope that we can do that as a church community. And Ted, your history was amazing. The Poor People's Campaign, even though it went digital, is still happening. So I hope people can learn more if you don't know more about the Poor People's Campaign and the work that they're doing nationally. This is the heart of the gospel, what Reverend Dr. Barber is doing with the Poor People's Campaign. Are there any questions? Go ahead and unmute yourself. If you would like to jump in, put it in the chat if you would like to learn more. Peggy put in the chat, I would like to learn more about the College for All Coalition. Would anyone be able to speak a little bit more about that?
I can. Okay, thank you for that. Very good. That's a great question. The NAACP and the local Latino Roundtable, we have been involved with the with College for All Coalition, which is the title. It actually is the advancement. It's Asian American Advancement Justice. So, and the purpose and the mission of that coalition is to be sure that the average student and the average parent is aware of the value of higher education, in addition to the legislations that involve higher education. If you're interested in that, I will be sure you can contact me and I can put you on the contact list. And right now we are pushing Proposition 16, Proposition 15, so, and Proposition 16 and 15. And they are going to be on the ballot in November. So thank you for asking that, because that is where the NAACP has gotten their push to move Proposition 16 and Proposition 15 on the November ballot. Thank you.
Sandy Gable asks, can you tell us a little bit about what membership in the Pomona Valley chapter of the NAACP looks like?
Our membership is an annual membership, and it is all of $30 annually, which isn't a lot of money, and $18.10 actually goes to national, which is part of our assessment to be able to legally use the term or the NAACP publicly and privately. So we are in compliance and we are in good standing to use the NAACP. The NAACP membership, as I said, we have several members from Claremont. I mean, Sandy Hester is one of our one of our chartered members. We have John Foley. You have Natalie. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we have so many Claremont members, so I appreciate it. So the members open and you can join anytime during the year. So again, we have a website, so you can go on the website. Our website is www, which is naacp-pomona-valley.org. Membership application is there. Thank you so much.
Jeanette, are there other great ways that people in the congregation can support your work? Membership might be one option. What are other ways that people can be involved in local work in this community?
Well, we are inclusive. So all of our initiatives and local engagement is open to anyone who may align with the mission of the NAACP, which is dismantling we are to dismantle discrimination at all base. That means that we are the eyes and the ears when we sit in circles. We are the eyes and the ears, and we're listening for discrimination, any source of discrimination. We are to dismantle it. And if you believe that that is part of your core value, to dismantle discrimination, we welcome you to participate. Again, you can go on the website or you can contact me, and I will make sure that you're on our contact list and you can participate anyhow you would like. But as long as you align with the mission of the NAACP, and that is to dismantle discrimination. And we have a very inclusive membership, just to share that with you. Thank you. Good question.
Wonderful. Is there a final question from anyone? And then we can conclude our time.
I
Go ahead, Jeanette.
don't have a final, before this, is there a final question? Because I'd like to close with something very, I'm going to be very prejudiced and very partial.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, if this is the end and we're closing, I want to close with, we as women, strong women, you cannot stop a strong woman from being successful. And I'm going to highlight and I'm going to showcase Mary Lee Evers. She is a member and a resident of Claremont today. Her husband was shot down, but she still managed to move forward and raise her children. And she is successful today. She's also a national member of the NAACP. So I just want to give a toot out or cootie to women. And you know, women voting was just 100 years. So you can't stop us women, you men. Sorry, we're gonna move forward regardless. So I want to give a shout out to all women across the nation, particularly here on the call. Thank you so much.
Amen. All right. Thank you so much to all of our presenters today. Thank you for being with us and sharing about your incredible work. You have our support. You have our prayers. As we mentioned in the comment, the church is making a contribution to the Black Lives Matter movement in honor of Myrlie, who Jeanette just highlighted. A member of the church and who was the national chairperson of the NAACP at one time. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Jeanette, for 8 years ago reviving this chapter and working to dismantle discrimination and racism in our local communities. Let's just give a virtual round of applause